One of the last things my brother gave to me before he was detained without trial, now for over 7 years, was this badge saying 239. Talha was actually one of the earliest Guantanamo Bay campaigners, campaigned for the repatriation of people like Mozambique and Omar Dagas. And this was many years before anyone else, before there was a Michael Winterbottom recycled film, and in the days when even the Centre for Constitutional Rights was being smeared and blacklisted. And so I stand here today to continue the good work he did in the repatriation. In fact, many of the released British and repatriated British citizens and residents now campaign for Talha, so the roles are reversed. I'd like to pay tribute to the courage and dignity of Shaka's family, as has been said many times before. Actually, one of the very first people to visit my mother after Talha was extradited was actually Shaka Ahmad's wife and children. So it's not only just amazing that she manages to preserve and run a household under unjustifiable trauma, but that she actually managed to care about others, also in similarly horrible situations. I'd like to sort of talk about the issue of solitary confinement. It's something that is probably the last legalised form of torture. Talha at the moment is in 23 hours a day solitary confinement, so he's locked in the room the size of your bathroom with no human contact apart from strip searches. That's how he spends his Ramadan, that's how he spends his birthdays and so forth. This is the same thing that's happening in Guantanamo Bay, so nearly all the detainees have been subject to prolonged solitary confinement. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture made a special point that this type of prison treatment be completely abolished and nobody should serve longer than 14 days. There are actually 80,000 people in the United States in solitary confinement. We should remember, as horrible as the prisons are in Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay, they are extensions of the US domestic supermax system. They would be unimaginable without the US domestic supermax system, and they grow out of it. 50% of suicides in the US prisons actually occur within solitary confinement. And since Herman Wallace, the Black Panther who spent over 40 years in solitary confinement for a crime he didn't even commit and then died 2 days after his release, I think we should remember him and, as a tribute to him, ensure that this type of prison treatment is abolished within our lifetimes. So at the same time as the Guantanamo hunger strike, 30,000 people went on hunger strike in Californian prisons. On the third hunger strike, in prisons like Pelican Bay, in the shoe unit, in prisons that are, some of which are actually worse than Guantanamo Bay. I'd also like to, as much as it's encouraging to see so many of you here, and campaigning for Shaka over the years, there has been some very ugly developments happening. So many of these students who campaigned for Shaka Ahmed and the ISOCs, which were courageous enough to stand up for him and hold meetings with me or Victoria Britain, have actually been attempted to be blacklisted or smeared. So there's an organisation called Student Rights, which is a front for the neocon extremist group called the Henry Jackson Society. You may see the nasty man called Douglas Murray justifying everything from drone murder, torture, waterboarding, supermax prisons. And that group has attempted to blacklist ISOCs, Islamic societies, for simply doing no more than tweeting the e-petition for Shaka Ahmed, to do no more than effectively Amnesty International. I mean, if you're a student and you're here, please come and speak to me afterwards, because there is actually a student resistance campaign called Real Student Rights, asserting the rights of students to campaign for prisoners and prisoner abuse. And it's really important that we stand by those Muslim students and societies that have been courageous enough to stand up for Shaka. I think the reason we should all view Guantanamo Bay as intolerable is because it also erodes the nature of the domestic system in Britain. So things such as secret courts, for example, or prisoners, Guantanamo's at home, like Belmarsh and Long Martin, where prisoners are actually detained for as long as 14 years. I mean, without trial or charge. As Caroline Lucas said, a similar thing that's happening in Tamno. My brother was detained for 6 years without trial or charge. His co-defendant in extradition, Baba Ahmed, was detained 8 years without trial or charge. This is unprecedented, and it's the longest period of detention and trial in British legal history. Even to put in context, not even people in Northern Ireland's internment weren't actually kept for that long. So it's important we view Britannia as intolerable because it erodes the nature of the state and government. So things like presumption of innocence before proven guilty are completely thrown out the window. Habeas corpus, something British people should be proud of, is completely thrown out the window. And even the duty of government to protect its own citizens is something that becomes eroded too. So there was timidity under the Blair era for repatriating British citizens. I'd just like to end by Victoria's very, very humble in terms of what a contribution she makes as a journalist. I mean, she's one of the few journalists that actually makes friends with all the families affected. I'm just going to tell everybody to go and read Victoria's written Shadow Lives, which actually shows it's not just the prisoners are heroic, but often the wives and kids who just actually manage to get on with their homework or manage to run a household whilst under the most extreme forms of distress and trauma, which is also quietly heroic too. Yeah, thank you.